Welcome to episode 2 of Tree Spotting, where I continue my fascinating journey of exploring trees in Lalbagh Gardens with Vijay Thiruvady. We just heard the story of the mammoth Mysorean in episode 1, and we're just going to walk down to see some more trees. Now these trees, they are not mammoth.
In fact, they look quite nondescript, and I've walked past them several times.
I never really looked at them. But I'm sure when I go with Vijay, he's going to tell me something about them that opens my eyes. Come, let's go to tree number 2.
Arun, this is a stand of PALASH trees, also known as the flame of the forest. The British could not pronounce PALASH, and so they called it Plassey. And every Indian knows of the famous Battle of Plassey. And it was fought on a grove of PALASH trees by the side of the Bhagir River. And now all know about it as Battle of Plassey. The Latin name for the PALASH tree is Butea monosperma, named after the Earl of Bute. It is interesting that the Earl of Bute, together with Princess Augusta, in 1759 started the botanical gardens in the Royal Pleasure Gardens at Kew. And Hyder Ali of Mysore started the Lalbagh Gardens right here in Bangalore in the year 1760. Within a year.
Wait. Let me get this right. 1757 was the Battle of Plassey, and just 2 years later, the Earl of Bute set up Kew Gardens in London, which is regarded one of the finest botanical gardens in the world. And a year later, Lalbagh was set up by our own Hyder Ali. And 42 years later, the British, after winning Plassey, came down here to Mysore, defeated Hyder Ali's son Tipu Sultan, and took charge of Lalbagh.
As we know, for the next 150 plus years, Lalbagh and Kew Gardens have collaborated.
Wow, what a connection. Vijay, you always manage to bring out such amazing connections. I'm getting the goosebumps just standing here. I'm actually standing on a field of PALASH trees. And this was the inspiration for the name, the Battle of Plassey.
Here in Lalbagh, we have a stand of about 5 PALASH trees surviving. And Mr. Fateh Ali, the famous environmentalist, he mentioned that once when he was at Ratlam railway station, he noticed a fire in the distance. He ran to the station master, took him to his window in his carriage and said, "Go and have a look at that. I mean, there's a big, huge fire. Do something about it." And the station master, I believe, smiled at Mr. Fateh Ali and said, "This time you've got it wrong, Mr. Fateh Ali. That's a grove of PALASH trees in full bloom. And that's why it's called the flame of the forest." The PALASH itself has various names across India. Tesu, Dak, PALASH itself. It is the state tree of Jharkhand. It is the UP state flower and the tree of the Union Territory of Chandigarh. And every part of India, the drier parts in fact, have great use for the PALASH tree. It is very important culturally, it is important commercially, for folk art, sacred uses. In North India, it is also famous. Powdered PALASH flowers were the original gulal, a completely harmless vegetable dye used in Holi. Amir Khusro, the famous Sufi saint who lived in Delhi over 700 years ago in the early 1300s, is credited with inventing the sitar. He has a bizarre reference in one of his poems to the PALASH flower. He says it looked like a lion's claws, just drawn blood.
What's the cultural significance of this tree?
This has so many connections with our culture. and religious life. If when a Brahmin is getting his thread ceremony, uh, he has to hold on to a twig of this with 3 leaves right through the ceremony. Made in the form of a cup. It is used to pour ghee into to keep the sacred fire or agni going. In Bengal, it is a particularly important plant, whereas in the rest of India, you raise agni or the sacred fire with the twigs of 7 specified fig trees. In Bengal, they use twigs of the Butea monosperma.
See, the tree looks quite nondescript. I'm just waiting to see it flower. Vijay tells me it will bloom in March. I'm surely going to come back, and I hope you do too. Let's come and see the Palash in bloom in Lalbagh.
In Bengal, particularly Shantiniketan and those areas, Tagore wrote a lot of poems on the Palash.
রাঙা হাসি রাশি রাশি অশোকে পলাশে রাঙা রেশা মেঘে মেশা প্রভাত আকাশে নবীন পাতায় লাগে রাঙা হিল্লোল দ্বার খোল ওরে গৃহবাসী খোল দ্বার খোল লাগলো যে
It's a very big thing for Tagore culturally. Every year, at this time of the year, he used to insist that the girls perform 4 dances around the Palash trees in the campus. Then he encouraged the women students to come with sari-length cloths, which they would create a vat with the Palash flowers, and they would dye the cloth, which would get yellowish color. And if you added alkali to the dye, it became darker and darker. This was a standard dye used by Buddhist monks for their robes.
Vijay, what's that blood-like substance oozing out from the bark?
Arun, this is the Bengal kino or gum secreted by the tree. Kino is a gum found in many plants in India. Palash tree is the most widespread, leading to the palash itself being called the Bengal kino. The gum has astringent and anti-diarrheal properties. In the East Indies, kino is used as a cotton dye, giving the cotton a yellowish brown color known as nankeen.
Now, what's the most important commercial use of the Palash tree?
It is a host tree for the lac insect. The lac is a substance secreted by the lac insect. It is used in the preparation of shellac and wax and for other wood finishes. Millions of the insect collect together on the trunk or branches of a tree and secrete lac. Female lac insect exudes lac to form a protective layer around eggs. Once the eggs hatch, the villagers just scrape it off, and that when it's heated, it just melts down into lacquer, which is also used as the government of India's sharp. The wax, it's lacquer, and this tree is famous for it. Of the trees on which millions of lac insects settle down, the Palash tree is the second most important tree. Lacquer, of course, has got many other uses. The most extraordinary one I found was that it is used to glaze chocolate. That's what gives it the smoothness and the glaze on the exterior. It's interesting that in hill stations, a lot of chocolate is sold. There are no factories where you can have glazing done. So the chocolates which are sold all have a matte finish.
So look at the ingredients when you buy chocolate. We owe the resinous glaze to the lac insect.
Lacquer finds numerous uses. It is used to polish furniture, especially in China. It is even used here in Channapatna toys. The glazing of the toys, the finish, is from lacquer. The leaves are stitched together with slivers of bamboo. And you have a disposable decomposing plate.
So what's the origin of the word lac or 100,000? You guessed it. It is the lac insect. There are literally lakhs of insects and lakhs of uses too. The stories of this tree are endless and varied. Vijay tells me that we are barely scratching the surface. He would say that. And to think I knew nothing about this tree just 15 minutes ago. Thank you, Vijay, for infusing so much meaning into yet another tree.
Vijay has told me something very chilling indeed. That there's something very unique about this place I'm standing in. In fact, I'd like to believe there is a battle going on here. Bangalore's own Battle of Plassey. Yes, on this Palash field, there is a battle going on. And we'll tell you more about it in the next episode. Bye.